Hey everybody, welcome back to my Star Wars show. I'm your boy Abram, joined as always by Mr. Andrew Roscoe, and we're here today. I am in Saw Gerrera's secret bunker. You don't know where I am, but you do know that we are here talking about Rogue One, which is a really awesome opportunity because obviously, unless you've been living under a rock, Andor Season 2 segues directly into Rogue One, just as Rogue One segues directly into A New Hope. And so we wanted to revisit the film with the sort of fresh eyes and context of Andor and revisit it to see sort of how our thoughts on it have changed and developed and sort of what we picked up on new this time. So this isn't really a review of Rogue One. I think if you're watching this video, you've seen Rogue One at least one, or in the case of, I'm sure, both of us, many times since 2016. So the plot of the film shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, nor should the spoilers therein. We will be talking about Andor Season 2, obviously, as it relates to this. So if you've not caught up, if you've not finished, this is your one warning. Anything is on the table for Andor spoilers. But, Andrew, I'm curious to get your thoughts by knowing this. I'm curious what you thought of Rogue One when you first saw it, and then how your thoughts have changed now. I mean, I'm sure your thoughts have changed to some extent since seeing it in theaters to, like, pre-Andor Season 2.
Right.
But I'm curious about the end points, really. So take me on the arc of how you thought about Rogue One initially to where you sit with the film now.
Well, I mean, I feel like it hits a lot harder the first time you're watching it. I remember watching it in theaters, opening night. It was like a Thursday near almost midnight. I forgot exactly when it came out, which day, but I remember being seated, and first thing weird, jarring, very jarring, no scrolling text wall. I remember that was my first impression, and like, but then we get that really cool shot of the rings. You don't know they're the rings of the planet yet. Right, is that the shadow kind of like it has like the silhouette of the Star Destroyer, and then like I'm like, what am I looking at, right? And then it pulls back, and then you're like, oh, it's like they're in the shadow. Okay, the rings are in the shadow of something. Okay, like that's a really cool opening shot, despite the lack of the opening crawl, which I really love. But I mean, obviously it hits harder for me. Everything that happens, not knowing the fate of the characters. I'm thinking like, okay, some of these are going to end up in comics or something, and like, well, there you know what happens, right? So, but yeah, having seen it now with the content, I've seen it. I've honestly, Rogue One might be the least watch of the Star Wars films for me, just because when I watch, usually when I'm in the mood for Star Wars, I kind of just tend to marathon like the episodes in like little trilogy arcs, right? Little trilogies, and Rogue One up to now. Being kind of its own offshoot kind of thing. I just didn't revisit it that often. I've seen it a handful of times, but there's still stuff where I'm watching where I'm like, oh yeah, like I forgot this scene happens, or like most Star Wars films, I kind of know almost like what the next line is going to be.
Sure.
I don't have that kind of familiarity with Rogue One as much, aside from like what what odds, like what choice do we have? Like a few lines, right? A few lines, I just know them, but. It's definitely my least watched of any single Star Wars film. So watching it again now with the context of Andor Season 2, I definitely walk away from it very different than when I saw it the first time, where I kind of just went in with no knowledge at all whatsoever. And now I'm kind of like, okay, I think it doesn't hit for me as emotionally, except for one particular thing. And it's going to, obviously, Andor himself, Cassian, his fate and all that. That does hit a lot harder. Especially with the finale of Season 2 of that last shot, right? We know what we're talking about. But, I mean, some of the things, Leia, I've definitely kind of come off of that, like, since when I first saw it. The Darth Vader fight scene, still cool. It's not as cool now that it's been memed to death so many times, through social media and all that. But, I mean, there's some things I take away from it that are like a little bit different now that we've seen Andor, Season 1 and 2. There, I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, that one thing kind of contradicts this. And but there's other things that enhance for me. Like, now I believe the K2SO relationship a lot stronger now with, the context of Andor Season 2. So yeah, some things have changed. Some of the lusters kind of shined off for me a little bit. But overall, it's still a fantastic, solid entry in the series. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I remember being like, I used to have more hair back in 2016. I remember my hair being
So
blown
did I.
back.
So did I.
There we go. With excitement when I saw Rogue One in theaters. And then I remember coming home and playing the Scarif DLC in Battlefront, being like, oh my god, this is awesome. And that was a good DLC for an underrated game, the 2015 Battlefront. But my thoughts on Rogue One have definitely sort of changed over time. I think this is only my third time seeing it. I think I've actually seen Solo more than it, and I like Solo a lot.
Yeah.
I find Rogue One to be a pretty rushed feeling movie,
Yeah.
and I don't and I think that's only highlighted really by Andor, which is obviously a show, if people have seen our now like 8 hours of discussion about the two seasons. um, it's anything but rushed. It really stops to drink in a scene, an idea, and Rogue One doesn't do that. And Rogue One is also famously a heavily rewritten movie. And what we have is not necessarily entirely Tony Gilroy's vision. And he was always just sort of a writer. He didn't have this sort of overseer role on Rogue One that he ended up having on Andor. This movie was actually directed by Gareth Evans, who I like quite a bit. People would also know his work from the Godzilla
Gareth
2014
Edwards, no?
movie. Yes, you're right. Gareth Edwards. Gareth Evans started The Raid. I always mess up their names. You're
Oh.
right. You're right. It's Gareth Edwards who did Godzilla in 2014, did The Creator like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I really like that movie. And doing the new Jurassic movie as well. Um, so it was always sort of a little bit more of a committee. And it's not like Andor was made solely by Tony Gilroy. That's far from true. But there was a lot of intervention, a lot of rewriting. There was not the sort of the same clarity of vision that Andor has. And I don't think that I quite noticed that until rewatching it this time. I think what for me now with the context of Andor, I'm both higher on some aspects of Rogue One and lower on others.
Mm-hmm.
But my
Yeah.
overarching sentiment is that I think that this movie works quite well now as like a tonal bridge between Andor and A New Hope, because there's always a post going viral someplace about, isn't it so funny that like Andor is fighting and dying and everything that goes on in that series, and then like Luke and Han and Chewie are like running around, and it's like a lot funnier, and there's a lot more happenstance, and like imagine being anybody that survives Andor, imagine being Clea watching Luke get his medal and being like, damn, what the hell happened here? And that's not a criticism of A New Hope. It's just simply that there's obviously a massive thematic and tonal difference between A New Hope and Andor. But I think Rogue One works to bridge that a little bit, because Rogue One is funny, but it's also more serious.
Mm-hmm.
You get sort of a bit more comedic relief than you would expect out of an Andor arc,
Right.
which I like. And I think it sort of bridges in that respect the deep darkness of Andor and the levity and imagination of A New Hope. So in that respect, I really gained a different appreciation for Rogue One than I anticipated that I would. But let's think a little bit about the balance here, because I had several questions. Basically, Andrew, rewatching the film, I had a bunch of questions I wanted to get your temperature check on.
Okay.
In light of Andor season 2. What do you make of the characterization of Cassian in Rogue One versus the characterization of Cassian in Andor? Do they feel like different characters to you, or do they feel continuous?
Honestly, I do feel there is a noticeable gap. I think, at least for me, there's definitely a gap. And I mean, part of it is also just obviously the age down Cassian, who's 10 years younger, kind of showing a little, a little less rough looking, a little more clean and proper. And I'm not even just talking about like his haircut and his gear. I'm just talking about like, you can see like the lack of age lines that he kind of has in Andor seasons 1 and 2, obviously. But also, and this is something that I don't know if you picked this up as much as I did, but just even the way he speaks, Because at this point, I can still get a little bit of that Spanish inflection in his voice, where the accent's a little stronger than it is in Andor season 1, season 2, where he's like, again, we spent 8 hours of pure Cassian, in I mean, it's not all exactly 8 hours, but I'm saying we've so much hours of dialogue. He's had all this time, all this practice to work on his accent. And so watching Rogue One, it's like, oh, it's okay. It's a little stronger than I remember it being. But so yeah, it is a little jarring. Even just the kind of the inflections in his voice are just a little different, and it's like oh, that's right. Those are mostly just his expressions on his face, and just his voice is like, oh yeah, like this is 10 years younger. Diego Luna, pretty much almost 10 years, right? Because it's like, I was like, what, 2016 or something? Yeah. So it coming out, 9, 8, season 1, 7-year difference, but here, like, it's pretty, that was pretty noticeable for me, but I kind of just ended up forgetting about halfway through the movie. I kind of just got used, it kind of just slipped into it again, and I kind of forgot about it after about halfway through.
Yeah, I mean, Diego Luna has aged as though he did some kind of sacrifice to maintain his youth. So I noticed that too, but I also kind of forgot about it. I mean, if you put them side by each, him and Rogue One in season 2, I'd notice it more. But I think what I was realizing while watching is that I was remembering why I was not that interested in Andor before season 1 came out. Because I think, as we even discussed, like, oh, why would you make a show about this guy?
Right.
He ultimately just, he doesn't feel that remarkable in Rogue One. I really think that his intro, when he's getting information out of that rebel informant, who he then kills alongside the stormtroopers and escapes, feels very in keeping with who we know Cassian to be, the operator we know him to be from the show. And so I like that a lot, but I think where I feel a disjunction in his characterization is his willingness to trust Jin, the relationship and the dynamic that unfolds between them. He feels like a much less jaded person here, and I think they do some real work to try to bridge that gap on the Andor side in season 2, as we have him sort of urging others to trust in Luthen's intel about Galen and about Jedha, about Galen, Kyber, and everything. So I feel like they try to instill this, like, in the show, this sense that he really is for the cause, and he's got this faith that he's putting in others now. And I like that arc, obviously, from where he begins the very start of Andor season 1. But I still think there's this impossible to bridge gap between him and the show and him and the movie in this regard.
I do feel that when it comes down to Galen Erso, where he feels, you almost get the feeling that he's a little reluctant to take him out, and I'm like, I feel Andor season 2, and that Cassian wouldn't really hesitate as much. I felt like kind of like when he feels conflicted about the orders he receives, and I'm like nah. I feel like Cassian in Andor season 2, he's a lot more hardcore. I think he'd be like, all right, like, this is what we got to do, like, because I don't know. I feel like he's way more somehow. Not that he's more radicalized in season 2 compared to Rogue One, but I don't know. I think I do see that disjunction you're talking about, where it's kind of like he almost seems a little, I think, kind of softer in Rogue One. Yes. I don't know if you can. Yeah, I feel like it's a little softer in Rogue One, which is obviously chronologically weird, but I don't know. I think because we're after everything we know contextually from the Gorman massacre and the Aldhani heist and his time in Arcana and all these things have kind of like hardened him, but also made him, I think, far more like pushed to the brink, to the limit. And then this kind of Cassian we're introduced to, he's a little more kind of by the book, and I'm like, I don't know if I feel this. I don't know. I feel like he's much more of a rebel in his own show than he is, like, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of, it does feel a little off, I think.
Yeah, I do think, because I agree, but then I'm also thinking about moments when, like, it feels in keeping. Like, a good example for me is, if we can buy into his faith in the Ursos, I think that his disobedience of the order and hierarchy on Yavin 4 in season 2 makes it feel a lot more believable that he would be lining up with Melshi and all the guys to jump on a U-Wing or jump on a stolen Imperial transport and go to Scarif with Jin to steal the plans.
Sure.
Like, that's one area where I think that they did stitch things up a little bit better, because I think a broad issue with Rogue One, sort of stepping outside of just the comparison and the continuity between Andor and it, is that the movie clearly, like, it's one where you can feel that it's been rewritten. Like, you can feel that things are progressing just because the story needs this to happen next. You know, okay. Jin is told she can't, you know, have a organized assault on Scarif, so she leaves the meeting room and immediately Cassian's got troops. Or immediately we learn that General Radis is above Scarif with his... Like, it doesn't quite cohere, I don't think, in its own context. But this is where Andor really helps it, I think. When you come to understand that, you know, Cassian didn't wait a minute when he learned that Clea, and in his mind, I guess at that point, Luthen were alive and radioing for help on Coruscant. He was immediately hopping on the U-Wing with Melshi to go rescue them. So I think that in those respects, they kind of stitch things together. Were there other areas for you where you felt like the show did build and add and sort of put in context Cassian's behavior in the movie?
I mean, other than just the stuff with K2SO, where like now I do believe that these two have been friends for a while. Where K2SO's kind of dry sort of sarcasm, like it makes sense to me. I mean, it worked for me without the show, but now I really do kind of buy into it. All the stuff about, you know, oh, I'm here for you too, Jin. Like, Cassian told me I had to be like that, you know, with now the context of like what happened on Coruscant with him and all that, and then playing card games with Melshi back on Yavin, like it feels much more real. It feels much more real to me. So that does feel more real to me. The one thing I thought was kind of funny, and it's not even like a character thing, is that if you watch the end of Andor season 2 going into Rogue One, the time jump with young Jin and young Krennic kind of feels really weird. I kind of almost wish we went straight into the whole him meeting the spy on the ring of, I can remember, Karaf, whatever it is, the ring of Kafrene, there you go. Like, I feel like that would almost be a seamless kind of transition if it wasn't for that awkward time jump in between. That's not even like a character thing. That's just the editing thing. Yeah. I'm like I almost wish I could take this scene out so I could just kind of flow into it, and it would be like no like skips or beats like missing or anything. But of course, you know, Rogue One is very much Jin's story, so you can't do that. You can't do that at all, right? So I guess that's like the biggest thing, is also just having Cassian take much more of a backseat. I mean, even in Andor season 2, I felt like there was less Cassian than there was in season 1, just because we have all our major players with Mon Mothma and Saw and all that. But him just taking, obviously, because Rogue One written before the show, obviously, right? So it's not about him, it's much more about Jin and all that. And then kind of, I don't know, I think with the context of Bix and everything, like I feel like I like Jin a little less. I don't know why. I just feel like Jin, she just feels so out of place almost in a way, but only because you have hours and hours of Cassian, right? And then like, I don't want to get into it because it's like towards the end of what I want to talk more about with regards to her and Cassian's relations, but it comes way more toward the end. But I somehow walked away from this liking her a little less, but I liked Cassian even more, which is weird. It's like one had to be sacrificed kind of in my mind for the other to kind of get elevated. But I'm curious to see what you think about just everybody else later on. So
yeah, I think we ought to talk about their relationship, but before we do, you mentioned Melshi, and this is one area where I really felt like Andor helped the film, because Melshi left such a scant impression on me from the film that I didn't even remember that he was an existing character when he came back in Andor season 2. I had completely forgotten that he was even in this movie, but knowing his relationship with Cass, and like you were citing one of my actually just favorite scenes from all of Andor, the card playing scene with Melshi, Cassian, and K2, having that context in this makes it even more heartbreaking. The I don't do we see Melshi die on?
He dies off screen unceremoniously. Yeah, which is very weird that he of all the characters he would be the one included in season 1 of Andor to be like, like we know you're barely in the movie, but like would you like to come back for this role? And we're just gonna just drop you in sporadically until we get to the movie.
Yeah, I like him being like Cassian's not only friend but like his trusted number 2 to be leading this ground assault. And seeing him, because we do see him get shot, and then he's retreated back into the bunker when we need Chirrut to go flip the master switch. Right. Seeing him almost dead, pinned down like that, like it felt like it meant something now, unlike before when we didn't know who he was. Because I think the only time we even hear his name in Rogue One is when he's being chatted to over the comms. Like there's no establishing scene with him before Scarif. So I really liked what Andor added to his characterization. But yeah, let's think about Jin and Cassian a little bit. I think the balance between them is interesting, because obviously now that we know so much more about Andor and we both love Cassian as a character so much, having him be a supporting character opposed to the lead feels a little strange. But that's not necessarily Jin's fault or Rogue One's fault. I think for me the issue is just that we come to know these characters in Andor that have such strong ideology and conviction and moments of radicalization that I just don't think that Jin gets that in a believable way for me. I think she feels really just motivated by the plot. I don't think Felicity Jones is really given that much good material to work with, and I think that the edit and the rewrite don't really do her favors. I think she's just kind of uninteresting. And I think that problem is just a bigger spotlight shown on it because of how meticulous the character writing is, not just for Cassian but for literally everybody in the show. Because I also found myself thinking like, man, I wish we got more out of Mon Mothma in Rogue One. We get basically nothing. And as we talked about in our review, for me, I would say that Mon Mothma is my favorite character in all of Andor. So
just imagine her being filmed during Rogue One, and it's like don't worry, like Genevieve, you're gonna get an entire 2 seasons in a few years to expand your this one note character you have so far. Don't worry, it's gonna be great. Just be patient.
Yeah, and it paid off, and I guess in some ways I also just kind of feel bad for Felicity Jones that like I don't think there would have been any way to not have it feel forced to like have Jin appear in the last arc of Andor season 2, but I think that I don't know, I just wish that there was something that gave her character more richness, but there isn't, and there wasn't in Rogue One before, so to me it just feels like a worse issue. Did you see that
interview where Tony said that like they had thought about it, but they couldn't find a way where it would make sense without making her like a kind of like cheapen her character?
Yeah, I mean, because when we meet her as an adult, she's in Imperial prisons. Like, you could like kind of maybe have her, like see her in prison, but what do you even really gain from that? It's a hard position. I think it was just a corner they couldn't get out of just because of how Rogue One unfolds with her.
Mm-hmm. What did you think about with Saw? Did you feel any different with Saw, seeing him here as opposed to lies? Deceptions. And like I felt like the Borg Gullet thing kind of came out of nowhere now, because I'm like where was he in the first 2 seasons? You know what I mean? Like I kind of just like it felt like this was like again I did feel like a slightly different Saw than the Saw that we saw in the show, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like him using the creature to try to torture information out of Bodhi did feel in keeping with how sort of fanatical Saw is. But I don't know if my thoughts on Saw have really in Rogue One have changed that much now. I will say that actually, to the contrary, one element where I felt like I could feel Saw's characterization more is when he opts not to leave the base on Jeddah. When he disconnects his respirator, which we know now is because he's been huffing the Rydell. Like that moment of him wanting to breathe and stand on his own 2 feet and die like that is cool, and I feel like it meant a little bit more. But at the same time, where I think I agree with you is like Saw is like such a militant figure. Would he just die like that? Would he let that happen? You know, would that be the end he wants? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I still feel like it's just like again, I feel like in a lot of ways, just the issues that were intrinsic to Rogue One for me just are like cemented in some way by Andor being so much stronger in the writing department, particularly.
Yeah, trying to work backwards is tricky because I mean we have the scene where Cassian's in there with like Chirrut and Baze, and you know they talk about like, oh, the first time being in a cage, and he's like oh it's something along the lines of like, no, it's like a first time for me, and it's like obviously we know that's not exactly true, but
I
like
forget
just
what it
one
was.
of those things, huh?
Like somebody asked him about this, and it's like,
yeah.
It's what is it? It's like Narkina 5 was an open air prison or something. So technically, it's okay that he says. I forget what the justification was.
He also
was,
just
like,
said that like, oh, he's probably just lying to them. Like why would he even like say, you know, about it? Why would he be honest about his past? I'm like, yeah, I could say Cassian has like so many identities at this point that like, yeah, I guess he wouldn't be truthful 24/7. So
another moment, just thinking about moments that felt like they were deepened or made stronger by Rogue One. I think the death of K2SO hit a little harder now that we knew him better. It's sad watching him just get riddled with. By the way, though, isn't he supposed to be kind of impervious to those blaster bolts? By the way, I don't like to do a plot hole, Andy, but I feel like it's so important in Andor that he's impervious.
It's weird though because we also have that scene where Jin just takes out the other one with just one shot to the chest.
Yeah.
The one where he's like, you knew that wasn't me, right? Like that droid went down with just like one shot. It's very inconsistent. I don't know. It's very weird, especially if you played like the Jedi games with Cal Kestis, and you know how hard those things are to kill. And it's just, I don't know. It's very just all over the place. I know I saw some people kind of nitpicking that online too, and I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, it's not consistent just how resistant they are, but you know.
Yeah, and like
stronger than writers.
Like I'm not broadly that type of person, and we'll eventually cover this on the show. But like the whole holo maneuver thing, I don't care because it's cool. That's like my whole opinion on a lot of this stuff. Or like the other one that people won't shut up about on Twitter, which I don't even get, is people are so mad about the Kyber crystal changing color and the acolyte. People keep talking about that scene.
That was easy to understand, though. I felt that was pretty easy to understand.
Yeah, and it was just cool. But people get so in the weeds about this stuff. It's really annoying to me.
But crystal was exposed. That's why she was touching it.
I just feel like in the case of this one, I'm like, man, it's such a powerful moment watching the security droids ragdoll people in the Gorman Plaza, that to have them, you know, be so flimsy in the film feels like like one moment or the other is cheapened. But I do think that the person that K2SO becomes through season 2, you know, when he is killed, it hits harder.
Yeah.
So I did like that moment more. But I'm curious, Andrew, to ask you about what in some ways to some people feels like the biggest disjunction, which is the last moment that Cassian and Jin spend on Scarif Beach. And these sort of like romantic, it's not quite text in my view, but it's also not really subtext. Like there's just weird like romantic tension between them in light of Bix, in light of season 2. What do you make of that dimension of their relationship?
I mean, the only time I really felt that was when they're in that elevator and they're just like very close face to face. That's the only time I really, that's the only time I really felt it. But like at the end when they're on the beach and like that's not, to me that wasn't like I didn't feel, especially in light. I think when I first saw Rogue One, I definitely thought they were going to be a romantic interest for each other, just because these two new characters were fresh with, and I don't know anything about them. Having seen it now again, that kind of washed away for me. I only felt it in the elevator, but after that, and I just kind of felt with everything that's happened with Cassian, where if you remember, even like after the Aldani heist, he had that one woman with him when he was like hiding the the stash of credits he had above the shower. He had like that one woman that was clearly like probably like a one night stand, probably not even a serious relationship. So I kind of just feel like Cass probably just has like he has his like one true person, and then like a bunch of other like conquests, so to speak, on the side or whatever. Probably I'm kind of just guessing and filling in gaps here for myself, but I didn't really feel that, and I'm kind of glad they don't like ever kiss. Like even the embrace they have at the end, to me now it doesn't read so much romantic as much as it is more desperate and hopeful, kind of like here, like this is the end of the line, and it's like it feels like let's just we'll just hold on until like and like kind of just like shield her eyes away from what's happening. It didn't feel romantic. It felt just more like desperate circumstances, and like, hey, like if I have to die, like it's with a friend at least, kind of thing. That's what I got from it.
I actually completely agree. I mean, again, have been many years since I've seen the film last, so I sort of expected the nature of their relationship to feel more openly romantic, and I think that it's pretty evident that that is what the script is prodding at.
Sure.
But I don't really think any of it is not in keeping with him, his deep love and loyalty to Bix. I don't really think that it's at odds with the text of the film.
Right.
And like, if I knew I was about to die, I would hug whoever the one other person on the beach with me is. It just seems like it's a human moment, as you're saying. And so, I don't really feel any kind of way. I don't feel like Cassian has like betrayed Jin. I just think as you were mentioning earlier, this is a moment of real sadness. Mm-hmm. Knowing, because when all the characters are disposable, it's kind of like and this is, whether this analogy hits for anyone in the audience, I don't know, but it's a lot like Halo Reach, where like and they're very similar. They're like both these prequel stories that lead directly into the core first work, and they're full of completely disposable characters.
Sure.
And so I think that, to me, there was like a little bit more novelty than weight to the deaths in Rogue One before, because ultimately, like as much as we become endeared to a character like Bodhi, or Chirrut, they're new characters. It's they are disposable to a certain degree. But Cassian, we've spent so much time with him now that death really matters, and I think that one moment becomes like a linchpin to make the whole film feel more significant. Mm-hmm. It's sort of obvious that like his death is gonna mean more now, but I really do think on like an emotional level and like a visceral level, watching the movie, it really did add a lot for me, to know where he'd been before.
It does. It also kind of just pulling away from the characters themselves just for a moment, just thinking of it's just really cool just seeing how this massive sort of relay events in terms of the passing on of, I thinking of how this all started with, now with the context of Andor season 2, how all this really kind of starts with Daedra in a way. Just the leaking of information to Lonnie, who leaks it to Luthen, who leaks it to Clea, who passes it on to Cassian, who also kind of co-passes it on from Galen Erso to Bodhi to Jin, and then to the the Tantive 4 and just this massive relay of things. Like even without, I mean, it's still kind of amazing, sort of, that that whole stuff started with Galen, with him planning the the secret weakness and everything like that, but having the context of where you see how many things could have gone wrong in this long chain and series of a baton passing of how far back it goes. Like, I think even just that, even without the characters so much, kind of more of a macro view rather than a micro view, just seeing all the things that had to line up for the rebellion to pull off like this massive win in the end, after all the, like, in the span of what, Abram, 2 maybe 3 weeks, kind of, from what last week, or the last 3 episodes of Andor to the end of A New Hope. It's probably like a span of like maybe 2-3 weeks or so, just like all the cascading events that had to happen to get to this point. Like, for me, it does enhance the Rogue One for me a little bit, where I'm like, yep, Krennic still has to clean up all the mess from last week, from season 2, and it's just kind of like, it's just, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people kind of make fun of it's like all these things that had to kind of line up. It's a little too perfect, and then it's like, well, yeah, it's space fantasy or space opera, whatever you want to call it. But like, I don't know. I feel like that kind of enhances the story for me, just knowing all these unsung heroes and unsung villains too, of course. And it's just how these things had to line up, and like, even though they obviously didn't exist in the time when Rogue One like premiere and everything, just having that extra context of what it took for us to get to this point, I don't know. It kind of adds a little extra kind of extra spice to it for me.
I totally agree, and like, it's just good writing. It's just good stakes that all these things have to line up, and that we're always like one misstep away from the whole chain being broken. I just like that. I agree with you completely. And I think that Andor season 2 does a great job of setting the stage for it. I agree completely. I think that Rogue One felt a little bit more like a fish out of water when it didn't have Andor on the other side of it, when it was just that into A New Hope, for me at least. So yeah, it just goes back to my point about the bridging and like the gradual movement away from the real darkness of Andor into the light of A New Hope.
I do see that too, because if you remember, like Andor season 1, season 2, for the most part, like no forced characters whatsoever, right? And then we have that one healer, the kitchen maid, who's a one healer, and then here we kind of have our, Baze and Chirrut, who are kind of force stand-ins, and then we can go full force once we get to A New Hope. So we kind of Baze and like I think you even said it during our season 2 recap, but kind of like Baze and Chirrut kind of like that in the gap between the just the random force healer and then like the full on Jedi. We have like the kind of almost a force kind of connection there going on.
Yeah, I just really like that a lot. It's like slowly turn the temperature up, and slowly introducing those more really out there elements of Star Wars, right? That we take as just obvious and intrinsic to Star Wars, the Force and the Jedi or everything, but Andor treats as like anathema to the world. So, that also makes Rogue One important, because the other thing is, Andrew, imagine if you had no Rogue One and you just had Andor season 2 and then you had New Hope. That would really feel like there's something going wrong there.
That would give me hope for Andor season 3.
There's a couple other things that like annoyed me more this time, but then I want to end up by still talking about the things that we like about Rogue One, even though they maybe not as so directly informed by Andor, because to be clear, there's a lot of criticism I have of Rogue One, but I still do like it on the whole. I still do like it a lot. There's a lot that I enjoy about it, but I gotta say, I really, 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 really don't like the Tarkin and Leia stuff.
I knew it. I knew that's what it was gonna be. I knew it. Just because it's really weird now, isn't it? Like I felt like back when it came out, it didn't really bother me, and I think since then, with the deep fake Luke Skywalker and some of the other stuff we've kind of seen just in other media in general, the de-aging of Harrison, and I saw that bit of him in the was it Golden Circle, Golden what's the last movie?
Dial of Destiny.
Dial of Destiny. Okay, I knew it had to do with a circle of some type. I'm confusing it with the game also, the
Great Circle.
There you go. I'm crossing the wires. But like we've seen really good sort of that CGI rendering since then. So when you go back now, like 10 years later, and you're just kind of like, oh, like that looked better in my head, kind of like even Leia looked better in my mind. And then when I see Tarkin has like this weird plasticky rubber kind of look to him, and then Leia, just her eyes look kind of off. I don't know, like they're just like not lined up, and just it is very jarring. It is very jarring. I was more forgiving when it first came out, but like 10 almost 9-8ish years later, it's much more prominent to me. It's hard to ignore it.
I mean, it really looks like a PS5 cutscene. Like,
maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what it is. It's just that now we know what newer tech can do, that it kind of just looks. Yeah. You're right.
Like it looks like it's out of Unreal Engine 5. It's like some of the stuff we saw from The Witcher 4 from Unreal last week. Like, looked better than this, and that's just like obviously going to happen. But I think the difference for me between this and Luke, which also if people go back and listen to our reviews of Mando season 2, I'm not crazy about that either by any means, but that at least belongs a little bit more it like to the story, if that makes sense. Like Luke has more of a role. I might sort of take an issue with the fact that it's Luke that has that role in the first place, but he feels more fleshed out, right?
Right.
This in Rogue One, it feels like a novelty that, oh, it's Tarkin, or oh, it's Leia.
Sure.
You know, if you wanted to have Tarkin from the back, like for a shot, sure, cool.
Yeah.
Have the, you want to have the voice, whatever. Okay.
I think I heard someone I follow online even mentioned like it should have just left it where you see his reflection off the glass. Like that should have been just fine.
Yeah, I think so, because I think that the other thing that, like, to me, and this is where it just feels so obvious that Tony Gilroy got completely outmaneuvered in the rewrites process for this movie. There is a degree of fan service here that doesn't feel right. Like, it feels a little out of place to me. I think about not only seeing them, but things like I have a bad feeling, shut up, from K2 and Cassian, or like some of the musical.
You have to have it, Abram. Come on, man. You gotta. If you're not gonna do the opening crawl, at least keep the signature line.
Or even just like there's like some musical stingers, or like at one point for like no real reason on the Yavin base, it's over the intercom, you hear like, General Syndulla, report to the command center, General Syndulla. And like, I know that this stuff doesn't really matter, and Andor itself has a bunch of references in it too, like a lot more deep cut and like even more out of place references, maybe like some Old Republic references and various stuff are in Andor. But
I like the Hammerhead. Yeah.
I just think I don't know. I
R2
feel like
and 3PO do kind of feel out of place for me, though.
Yes, that's the other one I was thinking of. I couldn't remember.
Without them being around the people we know, it does feel weird, I think.
Yeah, these to me are like the rewrite moments. This is the Gary Whitta in the script, and I don't know if it's exactly him, but I know that he's he's like the only guy I know that was brought on to rework it. And it kind of feels like, oh, we need that Star Wars touch here. We need that little moment. We need that little callback. Which Andor is obviously largely devoid of. But positives, Andrew, because like I said, I'm broadly speaking positive on the film. That's just that Andor, we've just watched it, and I think it's just such a masterpiece of an achievement that in some ways it just makes Rogue One look weaker. But I think what Rogue One does for me, and even more so now, is it answers this desire to see in the films this large-scale battle and this large-scale conflict.
Yes.
That we rarely see. We see like in the Battle over Coruscant, or in bits and pieces across Revenge of the Sith, or in Hoth for a moment. But not even really in Andor do we see these big-scale battles for that significant of a period of time. But here we're in Scarif for a whole act, and we have this ground-to-air combat. And I think that it's important to have that somewhere in Star Wars. It's important to have one of these massive battles that usually just exists in the tertiary fiction. So to me, that's still the strongest aspect of Rogue One. It's just generally thrilling filmmaking. It's beautifully shot by Greig Fraser, who's an amazing cinematographer. Dune Part 2 is his most recent accolade.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Also has shot like the Batman and various things. He's been around for a while. But I just think it's a really well-constructed, exciting action movie for the last hour. And I think that's really worth a lot of praise, because it still feels singular. Andor has not replaced that in any way.
Dude, when we follow that X-Wing from Yavin, like that perspective, and it goes into light speed, and then it pulls out, and you see all the other X-Wings pull out, like I got like let's go. Like I just feel like those like chills. I'm like, oh, like here we go. Like whenever you want to make me happy, Aaron, you just put a light speed, hyperspace sequence in there, because I just the sound, the poppy, that of people dropping out of light speed. It just, oh my god, I love that scene every time. Like I was so happy when I'm like. I checked the run. I forgot how long the movie is, but I check when we get to Scarif, like when we're finally, after she, has her rallying speech. What choice do we have? And then everyone's all, ready to almost ready to break the alliance there, right? She gets her whole crew together. They get there, And then I look at the time and I'm like, we still have like 40 something minutes. I'm like, let's go. Good. Okay, this is like the very, very good part of the movie. This is like the payoff for the first whatever half, 2 acts or whatever you want to break it down to. I'm like, all right, here we go. So just that whole, I mean, the cynical part of me is like, this is where they sell the merchandise, this is where they sell the toys and stuff. But the very excited part of me is also just like, this is where we get the sand troopers, we get those.
I love the short troopers. They're so
the
cool.
Discolored AT-ATs. They look like they're put together with different parts or whatever, with the open side bay kind of thing, and the U wings and the Y wings and all the different color wings that show up, and that archive footage of Gold Leader, and like it's just pure like joy. Like, if we're not gonna have a lightsaber battle, Abram, like, this is the next best equivalent of a lightsaber battle at the end of a movie. So just having just all these capital ships show up, and that really dope concept of that shield gate thing, that the hub over the entire planet, which is just a really cool idea in general. I love that idea of this like one singular port basically that you can kind of go through, and that's like the only entry. And they're just doing the dogfighting, and you follow the ships going down, trying to get through before they close it. And then like when he that one excellent skids across the surface, so it's like almost like it's like tangible, like that force field, like all of that stuff, just all that stuff. The troops down on the beach, almost like the Normandy invasion kind of thing going on. Like, all of that stuff is just like, it's just so cool, dude. It's just so freaking cool, man. But my one negative, Abram, because I going back real quick, I promise it'll be really quick.
Yeah.
I definitely felt that moment where I was like, oh, that's right. This is like James Earl Jones' last moment as Vader, because his voice, like, again, just that it's very jarring, because after this is A New Hope, where he sounds like crystal clear, and then here his voice is very labored, and the little cringy, don't choke on your ambitions, and like it's those weird things you're talking about, like those weird things that kind of like don't work as well. That's just one negative. I promise I'm done with that. That's all I had to say. But everything else from, leaving Yavin 4, leaving the base, and then like, the guy that runs, you saw they brought back the guy who comes back to tell like the group that like they've like, there's a massive fleet amassing over Scarif, and like I think that he was in Andor season 2 for like 2 different scenes also, kind of thing. He comes in and rallies and tells them, I think he says something about from General Radis or something like that. Like, they brought that guy back for like 2 scenes, which, I mean, that's cool. That's cool that they kind of do that kind of stuff. Like, just like the most random stuff, they'll just bring back somebody like Melshi, kind of like that. So, but I mean, all that stuff leading the lightsaber hall scene at the end, everyone just dropping. I mean, the Dark Troopers. Oh my god, those guys are so cool. Even though like these special forces that just kind of like talking like encrypted language. Like, there's so many cool concepts that Rogue One introduces that I love. Kind of just adds to the rest of the expanded lore of the series.
Yeah, the Death Troopers, the Short Troopers, the U-Wing. There's a lot of really cool stuff.
Right, Death Troopers. I'm confusing Dark Troopers from Mandos. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I really, really like all that stuff. And you know that, like, again, we underplay a little bit in this conversation because it's about the relationship to Andor, but Cassian does come from here, and the character that feels a lot more well realized here is Krennic. I really like Krennic as a villain.
Yes.
And Krennic is good in Andor season 2, and he has obviously some standout moments, like his interactions with Dedra. Better now.
Yeah.
But I really think Krennic, I mean, obviously he's the main villain, so it makes sense, but he comes into his own really in Rogue One, and so that was a pretty brilliant bit of writing from the start. I was always a big fan of Krennic, and I like him even more now. But yeah, that last act, that's just like, that's why you get this director. I mean, this is his bread and butter, these big spectacle set pieces. His work, Edward's work is just really good at scale, at spectacle. And so, the moments of the ATs crashing through the tree line, the moment when we shoot the rocket at it and it like boom, and like it's hitting the head and like it turns back like it's alive,
so menacing. Yeah,
that's like straight out of Godzilla. Like that's like, you can see his touch there. And And yeah, I just love the Hammerhead crashing into the disabled Star Destroyer and pushing that into the other still active one. And they're trying to throw the thrusters in reverse, but it's too late. And you just see this big amalgam of ships crashing into the shield gate. It's just really strong imagery. And again, it goes back to Greig Fraser's work as cinematographer, and just his vision to compose these really interesting digital images. They look just as great as the like really austere shots of the Death Troopers when we first meet Galen at the start of the film, and they're just marching out of the fog. Those shots on location are just as interesting as the ones that are like ILM has been cooking up, for dozens of hours per shot. It all just really looks great. It sounds great. And that's the strength of Rogue One to me. Like, it is a very watchable movie. And I don't mean that just like it's watchable in the sense that it's tolerable. I mean, like, you put it on and you just fly through it. You don't feel the runtime. It's like 2 hours 15. It might as well be 90 because it just sort of moves. and that's again, to what we were talking about earlier, kind of to its detriment in the earlier part of the film. But it also just speaks to the strength of, even though this is like a more by committee thing than Andor, the right people were on the committee to make sure that the end result was a really entertaining action movie. And it still feels distinct because of that. So, as much as I think that the movie is hampered in some ways by Andor, it still maintains its own identity to make it, to me, still kind of a must watch as you're going through the saga. But there's one other main thing I want to talk about. What else from this sort of compare and contrast exercise do you feel like we've missed out on?
I don't think there's. I think we kind of covered it all. I'm trying to think of who are the overlapping characters. I mean, we kind of talk about Saul, we talk about Cassian, we talk about K2. We have, what's his name? Is it Dravik? I can't remember his name. The guy.
Oh yeah.
I love the, now we have a little more context for Cassian when they're coming back, and they're saying like, let them know we're in a stolen ship. Like, okay, that kind of makes sense now with with what happened at the last 3 episodes of season 2. Like, okay, we get like, okay, that kind of makes more sense now, that line. Kind of how he does his own thing, right? He does his own thing, and we see him at the end of season 2 where he says like, the day I have to like report on my comings and goings is the day like when I am gone, when I just leave. And it's like yeah, he kind of just does his own thing, and like that kind of that seamlessly story wise kind of just flows into that. It makes sense to me. Like, he's kind of like, he's in the chain of command, but he's also kind of just like, he kind of just does things based off of his gut feeling on if this is a good lead, this is not a good lead. And that kind of carries over. I think that still makes sense. Obviously, it's cool seeing Jimmy Smits again after not seeing him in season 2 of Andor. So like, hey, Jimmy, he's back. I think going back to Krennic real quick, just kind of seeing the toll of everything that happened over the course of the week in universe over the weeks, where he's much more kind of in control. In season 2 of Andor, he's a little more, he's kind of, pulling rank, and then to see him kind of start to flounder now under the same kind of pressure that he was subjecting to Daedra and to even to Partagaz in a way. Like, if you remember that line where he says like, he calls, I can't remember his first name, but he even says something about like I can't, like, I won't be able to help you, I won't be able to save you, if something happens. And we saw clearly he wasn't able to do that. And now he's, we kind of talked about this when we did the recap of season 2, but we're seeing him now be in this desperate situation now with, the next big, Tarkin above him. He has to answer to, kind of, and he's still trying to make sure, he's still trying to reassure himself and maintain, like he tells Vader, like, so I'm still in control, right? Like, I'm still in, and like you'll make sure to tell the Emperor, right? Like he's like very much like, he knows how this Imperial war machine works, and he's very much aware that he's now like the next cog, so to speak. And just just seeing the kind of more manic kind of develop, or degradation that he's going compared to where we see him, where he's a little more kind of hoity-toity in Andor. That kind of, that follow through kind of makes more sense to me. So yeah,
he knows what fate he can sign Dedra to. he's gonna, if he doesn't get outright killed by Vader, he's gonna end up in a Narkina prison. If this doesn't go according to plan. So I really feel those stakes. I agree with you completely. I think he comes out as a really strong figure in the film. I think sort of just the last point I wanted to hit on is that we talk about this as an action movie because I think it's largely devoid of the ideology of Andor. It's not a very ideologically motivated film. It's the sort of the deepest we ever get are these sort of allusions to hope or to sort of the broad strokes need for rebellion, right? But it's never that particular.
There's no amazing monologues here.
No, there's not. And I don't mean this as a criticism necessarily because I think that the monologues loom so large after Andor that they form this whole with Rogue One, where as we're wrapping up here, just to bring it back to the end of the film, even as Cassian is dying, you just think about the blinding light of the Death Star's attack. This is his life being burnt for the sunrise that he will not see, right? And I
saw a lot of that online.
Yeah, I'm thinking of these lines, and they're sort of reverberating, and it makes the action feel more substantial as well. It sort of gives it a backing. It makes it clear what they're fighting for. Makes it clear why they're dying for this on Scarif. It's not some sort of oblique thing, right, where they don't know, really what this is about to do to Alderaan or whatever, or it's just some sort of more abstracted big bad guy fortress in A New Hope. Like, it's bigger than even the Death Star. It's core to their self-actualization as people, so why they're fighting. And so when we're seeing them fight and die on Scarif, and it's exciting and it's tense and it's just good filmmaking, it also feels like it has a little bit more weight just because those brilliantly penned dialogues seep into this film too. So in that respect, it's not is it made better or worse, but in some ways I think where I ultimately come down on it is that Andor and Rogue One just complement each other very well.
Did the line of rebellions are built on hope feel any different for you this time, Abram, or not really? Now that we know it comes from the bellboy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because like the rebellion's not really built on hope. It's built on very meticulous paranoia and ruthlessness and like dogmatic belief, which I guess there is hope in that, and there's hope that moves them, and like you said, the Gorman bellhop shares this line first, so I think that it feels like it's a little bit more situated, but it also feels like a little bit more naive.
Okay.
What's the rebellion built on? It's built on like back channel communications in Luthen's curio shop with Clea doing Morse code over the interface, right? To plan some sort of guerrilla strike. Like, that's what the rebellion's built on. But it is also built on hope. It's not wrong. Okay. And so again, it's a yin yang, and I think that together Rogue One and Andor represent those sides quite well. Yeah.
I like it better, at least, than Rose's. We win by what was it? We win by saving, or
it's like don't. It's like we don't. You got
just platitudes. Just platitudes.
Yeah, as much as I love that movie, I think we lose. Yeah, we lose the. We lose the focus there a little bit by the end. But yeah. I wish it was. I wish it had been Chirrut, not Cinta, on Gorman that day. Wouldn't have gotten hit. Another thing I was thinking about while watching. But that's neither here nor there. Anything else you want to say about Rogue One?
No, I mean, other than obviously the awesome, scary Darth Vader hallway scene. That's always cool. I forgot that. I forgot for a while. I forgot that was coming up, and I was like, oh, I also have that to look forward to. Right at pretty much at the last 3 minutes of the movie, passing on getting that satellite dish lined up, finding the jumping across the holotapes and all that good stuff, getting to General Radis, and then yeah. No, I think we kind of gone over it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I think they spend too much time on Jeddah. I feel like Jeddah just takes way too long compared to the rest of the film.
Sure.
I don't know why. I usually like planet hopping in Star Wars, but I feel like Jeddah just takes too long, and then not enough time on that stormy planet where Galen's at.
Yeah, Urdu. That's a cool one.
Yeah, that was really cool. Do we see that in any other media? I feel like we do.
Off the top of my head, I don't remember.
I feel like it's in one of the animated shows, but maybe I'm just overthinking. But anyways, yeah, that's all I got to say on it.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, it feels even more fitting now for a more force-sensitive and spiritual show. But take us out with your famous phrase that you invented.
May the force be with you.